The void between stars has always been silent, but tonight it carried something else, something patient, something searching. A lone figure drifted through the dark expanse, his armored silhouette outlined against the slow burn of distant suns. He did not pilot a ship. He did not need one. The cold of space did not touch him, and the emptiness held no fear for a creature who had spent centuries walking through it. Battle Beast moved through the cosmos the way a predator moves through tall grass, slowly, deliberately, listening for the heartbeat of something worth killing. Behind him, light years away, the ruins of his most recent conquests still smoldered. An empire that had stood for 10,000 years had fallen in a single afternoon. Their greatest warrior, a being said to have devoured suns, had lasted less than a minute against him. Battle Beast remembered the moment with a strange hollowness. There had been no struggle, no glory, no song of clashing strength that could echo in the marrow of his bones. Only another body at his feet, another crown shattered, another disappointment buried beneath the dust of a dead world. He had crossed galaxies in search of something he could no longer name. A worthy opponent, a true challenge. A battle that would finally make him feel the way he had felt as a young warrior, when every fight was uncertain, when every breath could be his last. That feeling had been stolen from him by his own strength. The stronger he became, the smaller the universe felt, until even the gods of forgotten religions could not raise a hand against him without breaking. And so he wandered, hunting for the one thing power could not give him: meaning. Then he saw it. A small blue world spinning quietly in the dark, wrapped in clouds and oceans, fragile as a single drop of water suspended in the void. He had passed countless such worlds before. Most were not worth the effort of landing. But this one whispered to him in a way the others had not. He could feel it even from orbit, a strange concentration of power radiating from the surface, scattered across continents like embers from a broken fire. Superhuman. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Beings of immense strength walking openly among ordinary men, worshipped as living legends, treated as gods. He could feel their heartbeats, the pulse of their unnatural biology, the hum of energies that did not belong to any species he had encountered before. For the first time in many years, Battle Beast felt something stir in his chest. Not joy, not yet, but the faint, almost forgotten shape of curiosity. He began his descent. Far below, in a glass tower that overlooked a city of neon and noise, alarms began to sound. Vought International had spent decades watching the skies, and tonight the skies were watching back. Monitors lit up with readings that no analyst could explain. An object had pierced the upper atmosphere without slowing, without burning, without obeying any law of physics the corporation understood. In a polished boardroom, executives gathered around a long table, their faces pale in the blue light of the displays. One of them, a man in an expensive suit, leaned forward and asked the only question that mattered to him. "Can we sign him?" Another voice, softer, more cautious, suggested they wait. They did not yet know what this creature wanted. They did not yet know what he was capable of. But the man in the expensive suit was already calculating brand deals, merchandise lines, global tours. The strongest hero in the history of Earth might have just arrived on their doorstep, and Vought intended to own him before he had even touched the ground. They began drafting contracts. They began preparing cameras. They began rehearsing the story they would tell the world. None of them understood what was actually descending toward their planet. Battle Beast did not come to be photographed. He did not come to be marketed. He did not come to smile for children or wave from balconies or sell action figures in plastic packaging. He came because he had heard a rumor carried on the solar winds, a rumor that on this small blue world there were beings strong enough to be called gods. And gods, in his experience, made the best prey. He arrived in the wilderness first, in a place where the trees grew tall and the rivers ran clear, far from the eyes of cameras and the noise of cities. Battle Beast believed that to understand a world, one must first listen to it in silence. He stood beneath the open sky for a long time, letting the wind carry him the sense of this strange planet, the smell of pine and rain and distant smoke. Then he began to walk. He moved unseen across continents, a shadow passing through forests and mountains and quiet villages. He observed. He listened. He studied the creatures men called heroes. And at first he was impressed. He watched a woman with silver hair lift a collapsed building off a family of 3. He watched a man in a star-spangled cape fly faster than sound to catch a falling airplane. He watched a soldier in dark armor punch through reinforced steel as though it were paper. Their strength was real. Their abilities were extraordinary. By any honest measure, they were powerful. For a brief moment, Battle Beast allowed himself to hope. He drifted closer to the cities, closer to the men and women who wore costumes the way ancient warriors had worn armor. He stood on rooftops at night, watching the bright lights of advertisements that displayed their faces. He listened to the chants of crowds in stadiums. He saw children clutching plastic figures shaped in their image. And then slowly he began to see the truth. The collapsed building had been arranged. The cameras had been positioned before the woman with silver hair arrived. The family of 3 were paid actors who had rehearsed their tears in a trailer the night before. The man in the star-spangled cape had not caught a falling airplane. The airplane had been a controlled descent staged for a corporate film crew. The soldier in dark armor punched through walls that had been weakened in advance, walls designed to collapse on cue. Battle Beast watched all of this with a stillness that grew colder by the hour. He saw heroes refuse to enter burning buildings until the lighting was correct. He saw rescuers argue with directors about which side of their face the camera should favor. He saw a man capable of lifting tanks complain about the flavor of his energy drink, while a real fire burned 3 blocks away, ignored because no sponsor had paid for that footage. He saw merchandise, endless merchandise, bed sheets, cereal boxes, films in which actors played the parts of these so-called heroes, films in which the heroes themselves played exaggerated versions of who they pretended to be in public, until even they could no longer remember which version was real. He saw press conferences in which carefully chosen words were read from carefully written scripts. He saw apologies that meant nothing, promises that would never be kept, smiles that did not reach the eyes. And he saw what lay beneath the smiles: pettiness, vanity, cruelty. Heroes who beat their lovers behind closed doors. Heroes who killed civilians and paid lawyers to bury the bodies. Heroes who measured their worth not in lives saved but in market share gained. To Battle Beast, this was a kind of obscenity he had never witnessed in all his travels. He had fought monsters in many forms across many worlds. He had crossed blades with tyrants and devourers and creatures of pure malice. But he had never seen strength so thoroughly wasted. He had never seen power treated as a costume. In his philosophy, strength was sacred. Strength was earned in blood and bone and broken years, and it carried with it a debt that could only be paid through honor. To wield great power without honor was to spit upon every warrior who had ever died trying to become strong. These creatures were not warriors. They were performers. They were actors wearing power the way drunks wear borrowed coats, never understanding the weight of what they carried. Battle Beast felt his lip curl beneath his helm. His disappointment hardened slowly into something else. Something quieter. Something far more dangerous. Judgment. It did not take long for Vought to find him. They had been searching since the moment he entered the atmosphere. And although Battle Beast had moved like a ghost across the wilderness, he eventually allowed himself to be seen. He wanted to be seen. He wanted the strongest of them to come to him, the way wolves come to the edge of a fire. The meeting was arranged in the heart of the city, on a wide plaza framed by glass towers and television screens that stretched 3 stories tall. Crowds had gathered before dawn. News helicopters circled in slow, patient orbits. Drones hovered in the air like bright metal insects. Every camera on the continent was pointed at the same square of pavement, waiting for the moment that Vought had promised would change the world. When Homelander descended from the sky, he descended the way he always did, slowly, deliberately, bathed in artificial sunlight that the marketing team had timed to perfection. His cape stirred in a wind machine hidden behind the stage. His smile was the smile that had sold $1 billion in merchandise. He landed at the center of the plaza with his arms slightly raised, the way a king might greet a foreign prince he intended to humiliate. And then he saw Battle Beast. The warrior stood at the far end of the plaza, motionless, unimpressed. He did not pose. He did not smile. He did not acknowledge the cameras. He simply watched, his eyes narrow beneath the slits of his helm, his arms folded across his chest, the way a man folds his arms when he is deciding whether something is worth his time. Homelander walked toward him, projecting every ounce of charisma he had been trained to project. He spoke into the microphones with practiced warmth. He welcomed the visitor to Earth. He spoke of friendship between worlds, of partnerships, of the privilege it would be to stand beside such an impressive figure in the defense of humanity. The crowd cheered on cue. The screens displayed both men side by side, with carefully chosen filters that softened Homelander's features and sharpened Battle Beast's into something monstrous. Battle Beast said nothing. He let the man finish speaking. He let the cheers rise and fall. He let the silence settle. And then, slowly, he tilted his head to one side, the way a hunter tilts his head when an animal does something curious. He was studying him, not as an equal, not as a rival. Homelander felt it before he understood it, a strange tightness in his chest, a coldness behind his sternum that he had not felt in many years. He was a man who had been worshipped since childhood, a man who had walked through crowds of millions and felt nothing but the warm pressure of their adoration. He had stared down presidents. He had laughed at generals. He had killed men with a glance and slept soundly that same night. But this creature was not afraid of him. This creature did not admire him. This creature did not even respect him enough to hate him. What Battle Beast felt as he looked at the most powerful hero on Earth was contempt, pure, quiet, and absolute. The contempt of a true swordsman watching a child swing a wooden stick. The contempt of an old wolf watching a domesticated dog perform tricks for treats. Homelander felt his smile falter, just for a fraction of a second. The cameras caught it. The screens caught it. The crowd, somewhere deep in their bones, caught it. And in that fraction of a second, a thought arrived in Homelander's mind that had never arrived there before. What if he is right? What if all of this, the costume, the cape, the worship, the carefully managed image, was nothing more than a thin paint over something hollow? What if there was a kind of strength he had never possessed, a kind he could never possess, a kind that this stranger could see through him the way light passes through glass? The plaza was silent. The hunt had begun, and only one of them knew it. Battle Beast did not wait for permission to begin. He did not announce his intentions. He did not give Vought time to draft a response. The morning after the meeting in the plaza, the world woke to news that one of the most celebrated heroes in the Southern Hemisphere had been found in a crater outside his own mansion, his body broken in ways that the network anchors could not describe on live television. There was no witness. There was no demand. There was only a single armored footprint pressed into the soil at the edge of the crater, and a silence that spread across the continent like a slow, cold tide. By the end of the week, 3 more were dead. A speedster in the deserts of Asia, found at the bottom of a canyon he had been thrown into from the stratosphere. A telepath in Northern Europe, whose mind had been silenced so suddenly that her colleagues felt the absence of her thoughts before they heard the news. A flying brute in South America, whose body was recovered from the ocean floor by submarines that had to be specially dispatched to retrieve him. None of them had fought for long. None of them had been given the courtesy of a dramatic confrontation. Battle Beast did not believe in drama. He believed in measurement. He was weighing them, one by one, testing their strength the way a blacksmith tests the temper of a blade, bending each one until it broke, then setting it aside and reaching for the next. Vought tried to control the story. They always did. Their public relations division worked around the clock, drafting statements, planting articles, paying journalists, scrubbing footage, threatening witnesses. They called the deaths accidents. They called them tragedies. They called them the work of unknown terrorists, of foreign governments, of rogue elements within the Supes community. They produced documentaries. They commissioned songs. They held candlelight vigils that were filmed from 6 different angles. None of it worked, because the public could see what was happening. Cell phone footage leaked faster than corporate lawyers could suppress it. Grainy video surfaced of a massive armored figure walking calmly down empty highways while heroes hurled themselves at him and shattered like glass. Photographs appeared of small towns where Battle Beast had paused for a single afternoon, sitting in silence on a hillside while every Supe within 100 miles fled in the opposite direction. He never harmed civilians. He never destroyed property without cause. He never spoke to the cameras. He did not need to. His silence was louder than any speech Vought could write. Inside the Seven's headquarters, the atmosphere began to shift. The heroes who had spent years competing for attention now found themselves competing for invisibility. They canceled appearances. They refused interviews. They turned down missions. The Deep stopped leaving his apartment. A train avoided every city Battle Beast had been rumored to visit. Black Noir did not move from his quarters for 9 days. Even the newest recruits, who had once dreamed of standing beside Homelander on magazine covers, began quietly asking their agents about contracts in other industries. Homelander himself sat in his penthouse for hours at a time, staring out at the skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the news cycle turn from him to the stranger. He saw his own face appear less and less. He saw the stranger's silhouette appear more and more. He saw the merchandise sales for his own brand begin to slip. He saw the polling numbers shift. He saw, for the first time in his life, a world that was beginning to look elsewhere. And he felt something he had never been trained to handle: smallness. Meanwhile, in the high places where Battle Beast walked, a different kind of frustration was growing. He had crossed an ocean. He had crossed a continent. He had broken champions in 3 languages. And still, nothing had satisfied him. The strongest of them had lasted seconds. The fastest of them had not been fast enough to land a single blow. The cleverest of them had died mid-sentence, their last words swallowed by the wind. There was only one name left on the list. Only one figure on this entire planet whose strength had not yet been measured. Only one creature who had been built and bred and engineered to stand at the top of this strange hierarchy of false gods. Battle Beast turned his gaze toward the city where that creature lived. He did not run. He did not fly. He walked. He wanted Homelander to feel every step. He wanted the most powerful man on Earth to count the hours of his approach, to hear the slow drum of fate moving closer with each sunrise. He wanted the fear to grow before the fight began, because a warrior knows that the battle begins long before the first blow is struck. The city was evacuated for 50 blocks in every direction, though no one had given the order. The people simply knew. They had seen the footage. They had read the names of the dead. They understood, in a way that no press release could obscure, that something was coming to their streets that would not leave anything standing when it left. Homelander hovered above the skyline at noon, the sun behind him, his cape unmoving in the still air. He had chosen the time himself. He had chosen the place. He had decided that if this was to be the moment the world watched, then he would meet it on his own terms, in his own city, with the light of day on his face and 1,000 cameras to record his victory. Battle Beast arrived on foot. He walked down the center of an empty avenue, his footsteps echoing between the abandoned buildings, the morning light glinting off the worn edges of his armor. He did not look up at the man in the sky. He did not need to. He had been waiting for this moment since the first day he had set foot on this small blue world, and he wanted to savor the silence before it ended. Homelander struck first. His heat vision tore down from the heavens in 2 blinding beams that should have reduced any living thing to ash. The pavement beneath Battle Beast melted. The buildings to either side cracked and groaned. A wave of heat rolled outward in every direction, shattering windows for blocks. When the beams faded, Battle Beast was still standing. His armor glowed faintly. The fur beneath it was singed. He looked up for the first time, and his eyes met Homelander's across the burning air, and for the briefest of moments, the most powerful man on Earth saw something in those eyes that he had never seen in any creature before: amusement. He came down like a missile, faster than sound, his fists extended, every ounce of his strength gathered into a single point of impact. He struck Battle Beast in the chest with enough force to crack the foundations of the city. The shockwave blew out windows for a mile in every direction. The pavement collapsed. The earth itself shuddered. Battle Beast did not move. He looked down at the man embedded against his chest. He raised one massive arm, and he brought his fist down. The blow sent Homelander through 3 buildings. Glass and steel and concrete erupted into the sky. Office floors that had stood for half a century folded like paper. Battle Beast walked after him, unhurried, stepping over the rubble the way a man steps over fallen branches in a forest. What followed was not a fight in the sense that the cameras had been promised. It was a lesson. Homelander fought with everything he had. He flew. He struck. He burned. He screamed. He hurled cars, lampposts, entire sections of bridge. He drove Battle Beast through skyscrapers. He carried him into the upper atmosphere and let him fall. He came at him from every angle, with every weapon his biology could produce, and for the first time in his life, none of it was enough. Battle Beast met every blow with patience. He blocked some. He let others land. He studied the rhythm of Homelander's movements the way a master studies a student. He noted the moments of hesitation. He noted the wasted motion. He noted the way the man's strikes grew wilder as the minutes passed, the way the famous smile slowly disappeared, the way the careful posture began to break apart into something more honest, something more desperate, something more human. And he enjoyed it. For the first time in many years, Battle Beast was enjoying himself. It was not because Homelander was his equal. They both knew by the 10th minute that he was not. It was because Homelander was, at last, fighting for his life. The cape did not matter anymore. The cameras did not matter anymore. The brand did not matter anymore. There was only a man, stripped of every illusion, swinging at a creature who could not be moved. That was the closest thing to honor Battle Beast had found on this planet, and he was grateful for it. Truly grateful. Somewhere around the half-hour mark, the realization came over Homelander in a single cold wave. This warrior had fought stronger opponents than him, many of them, across centuries, on worlds whose names had been forgotten before Homelander's grandparents were born. He was not the apex. He had never been the apex. He had only ever been the strongest creature in a very small pond, and now the ocean had come to visit, and the ocean did not even consider him an interesting tide. Homelander began to laugh then, a broken, ragged sound, half rage and half something else, something that almost resembled relief. And Battle Beast, hearing it, allowed himself a small, slow nod. The battle ended quietly in the end, which was perhaps the most surprising thing about it. There was no final speech. There was no monologue. There was no shattering blow that drove Homelander into the earth and left a crater in the shape of his body. Battle Beast did not believe in such things. He believed in finishing a fight the way one closes a book, with a single small motion and no ceremony. Homelander knelt in the rubble of what had once been a financial district, his cape torn, his suit blackened, his face streaked with blood that he had not known he could bleed. He was breathing in short, shallow gasps. His arms hung at his sides because he could no longer lift them. He looked up at Battle Beast and waited for the end. It did not come. Battle Beast stood over him for a long moment, and then he turned away. He had taken Homelander's measure, and he had found him wanting, and to a warrior of his code. Killing a defeated opponent who had already broken inside was not victory. It was waste. He had no interest in adding another empty trophy to the collection of empty trophies that already filled his memory. He walked out of the ruins without a word. The cameras, the ones that still functioned, caught every step of his departure. The footage played around the world within the hour. Billions of people in every language watched the most powerful hero in the history of Earth left kneeling in the dust by a stranger from the stars who did not even consider his life worth taking. The collapse came faster than anyone at Vought had predicted. The seven, what remained of them, scattered. Some fled to other countries. Some retired into private estates and never spoke publicly again. Some tried, pathetically, to spin the events of that morning into a story of noble sacrifice, but no one believed them. The footage was too clear. The truth was too loud. Vaught's stock price fell by more than half in a single afternoon. By the end of the week, congressional hearings had been scheduled. By the end of the month, lawsuits had been filed in 12 countries. By the end of the year, the corporation that had defined the age of Supes was a hollow shell, its executives in flight, its board in handcuffs. Its name turned into a curse spoken under the breath of ordinary people who finally understood what had been done to them. Homelander was not seen in public again for a long time. There were rumors. There were always rumors. Some said he wandered the back roads of small towns, drinking in bars where no one recognized him. Some said he sat in his old penthouse for weeks at a time, staring at the spot on the floor where his cape had finally come to rest. Some said he had been quietly destroyed by his own employers, who could not afford to have him alive as a reminder of what had happened. The truth, whatever it was, did not matter very much anymore. The world had moved past him, and in the moving past something strange began to happen. People began to talk in cafes and classrooms and quiet kitchens about what strength actually was, not the strength they had been sold. Not the strength on the billboards. Not the strength that signed autographs and posed for photographs and lived in penthouses above the clouds. A different kind of strength. The strength of the firefighter who walks into the building without a camera crew. The strength of the nurse who stays past her shift. The strength of the teacher who keeps trying when no one is watching. The strength of a parent who carries a child through a long night without being thanked. It was a small thing, this shift. It would not change the world overnight, but it had begun. Battle Beast, far above, would never know what he had set in motion. He did not care for such things. He had come to hunt, and the hunt had failed, and yet, by failing, he had taught a planet a lesson it had needed for a very long time. When Battle Beast finally left, he did not announce his departure. He did not gather an audience. He did not stand on a tall hill at sunset and deliver a final word to the people of Earth. He simply walked, one quiet morning, out of the city where the great battle had taken place, and into the wilderness where he had first arrived. He stood for a while beneath the trees, listening to the birds, watching the sun rise through the leaves. He thought of the worlds he had visited. He thought of the warriors he had known. He thought of the strange, small planet he was about to leave behind, with its glass towers and its painted heroes and its hidden, quiet strength that he had only barely begun to notice in its ordinary people. Then he looked up at the sky, and he stepped off the earth, and he rose into the blue. The world watched him go. Some called him a monster. They spoke of the heroes he had killed, the cities he had cracked, the men he had broken. They said he was a warlord, a butcher, a plague from beyond the stars. Others called him a hero. They spoke of the corruption he had ended, the lies he had unmasked, the false gods he had pulled from their thrones. They said he was a liberator, a teacher, a gift the universe had sent to save them from themselves. Battle Beast, drifting now beyond the upper atmosphere, considered both names and found them equally meaningless. He was not a monster. Monsters kill without reason, and he had always had reason. He was not a hero. Heroes serve others, and he had always served only the hunt. He was a warrior. That was all he had ever been, and all he would ever be, and the small blue world below him would have to make of him whatever it needed to make. As he disappeared into the deeper dark, the stories began to spread. They spread through bars and barbershops and bedrooms. They spread through schoolyards and battlefields and quiet houses where children listened wide-eyed by the light of a single lamp. They spread as all true stories spread, not because anyone forced them to, but because people needed them. They were not stories about Homelander. They were not stories about Vought. They were not stories about the Seven or the Supes or the corporations that had once owned the sky. They were stories about the day a true warrior came to Earth and looked upon its gods and found them small. Stories about the difference between power and greatness. Stories about what strength is supposed to mean when no one is filming, when no one is paying, when no one is watching at all. And somewhere far above, between the stars, the warrior moved on, still searching, always searching, for the worthy fight that would never come.